Okay, so today we're going to be looking at positive and negative correlations. And so we can look at the way these are called scatter plots, these that have the dots everywhere. You can see a general trend in the dots as that these are going in an uphill direction, and we call that a positive correlation. So whatever the x is and whatever the y values are, they have a positive correlation, meaning as this one is increasing, this one is as well. So in this case, as the hours of revising occur, your exam results are going up. So on this one, you can see there's a general trend of these dots going in a downhill direction, and so we call those a negative correlation. So in this example, these are flu jabs, which we don't really call it that. We call them shots, like flu shots given. So the more flu shots that are given, the people with the flu, that number's going down. So more flu shots, less people getting flu. So that's called a negative correlation, whereas when they go uphill, that's a positive correlation. So people who do more revision get higher exam results. When more people get shots, then the number of with the flu goes down or decreases. Okay, so that's the difference between positive and negative correlation. Make sure you're completing your notes as we go through these examples. So you'll be working problems similar to this on your assignment today, and you will also have problems, or at least a problem like this, on your test to do as well. So it says to use the scatter plot to fill in the blanks, and you're given an answer bank. And so you're going to be completing these blanks according to the scatter plot. Now in this scatter plot, you can tell that there's a general trend of these dots going in an uphill direction. They're not going downhill. So we know that this indicates a positive correlation. Uphill is positive. Now here, it's going to require you to put words here that make sense for your variables and what's happening to them. So here it says your independent variable, so you want to put right here what your independent variable is, and here you want to put your dependent variable is. So make yourself a note that, remember, independent is your x. It can stand alone on its two legs. Dependent is y. It only has one leg. It depends on help from some other source. And so you're going to get your independent variable from the x-axis. So your independent variable is the hours spent studying. So that's what I'm putting in this blank. Hours spent studying. The dependent variable comes from the y-axis. It's the score on your final exam. Score on exam. Now here you're going to be using words like higher and lower. So you want to say, as something happens to this one, what's happening to this one as a result? So it depends on what you want to do with your x. If you want to talk about it going this way, then you're going to say higher. If you're talking about it going this way, you're going to say lower. And what you say here depends on what you're going to put here. So I always say higher on the first one, because I always read graphs from left to right. And so that means my x is getting to higher values. So as my hours spent studying is getting higher, what's happening to the scores on the exam? Well, they're also getting higher. As I go to the right on the graph, these are going up. So here I'm going to put higher as well. Higher x's give me higher y's. Now on the second part, you're going to select all, and all of these will have two answers. You're going to pick which of the following could be your trend line. So if we had this trend line going here for the dots, which one of these would be good equations to represent for them? And so you're going to have to pay attention to your variables. H is for your hours spent studying, so H is coming from the x-axis, and S is coming from your score on the final exam, so it's your y value. So you're going to have two answers here, one in slope-intercept form and one in point slope form. You just have to pick the one that puts those variables in for the y's and x's correctly. So you want to pick out the slope-intercept form that replaces y with s. So you should have an s equals and replaces the x with h. So you want an h right here. So I can see that this one is correct. It has the s for the y and the h for the x. This one is not correct in slope-intercept form because it put the h in the y spot instead of the x. And it put the s in the x instead of the y. So this is the incorrect slope-intercept. Now I have to pick between these two which one correctly put in the variables in the point-slope form. So remember, I want these to be s's over here. So you see how this one has h's here and this one has s's? This one is correct. They replaced the y's with s's for the scores. Okay, so let's look at another example together. So on this one, we can see our trend line going downhill. So we know this is a what type of correlation? It's got to be negative. Downhill is negative. I'm going to skip down to where I'm putting what my variables represent. Independent is x, dependent is y. So my independent is hours of exercise. That's what I'm putting here. And my y is my dependent. It's the resting heart rate. So I've used my resting heart rate, my hours of exercise, and negative. Okay, so here, remember, you're always going to say your x is getting higher because we read from left to right. So your x is getting higher. What is happening as your hours of exercise is going up per week? Is your resting heart rate also going up, or is it going down? Well, since this is going downhill, as we read left to right, my more hours of exercise, my resting heart rate is getting lower. Higher hours of exercise give me lower resting heart rates. Okay, so now we're going to pick out our two. Remember, these two are in slope-intercept form, and the last two are in point slope. We have to pick out the one that correctly replaced the y's with the correct variable and the x with the correct variable. So it says let R represent the resting heart rate. Here's my resting heart rate. It's on the y-axis. So my y should be replaced with an R. Here it says H represents the hours of exercise. That's on my x-axis. So my H should be replaced in the x spot. So remember, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. So which one has the R right here? This one right here. So A is the correct slope-intercept. Point-slope form is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Which one correctly replaces these y's with r's? This one right here, C, is the correct point slope. All right, let's look at one more example together. So here is our trend of our dots going uphill or downhill. We can see they're going this direction, so that means we have a positive correlation. I'm going to go here to tell what my variables are. Independent is x. I go to the x-axis. It's the hours of sleep. So my independent variable is hours of sleep. My dependent variable is my y. I can use my y-axis to see that that means that's test scores for that dependent variable. So the graph indicates a positive correlation between the variables because what type of values of x? Well, we're always going to read left or right, so these are always going to be getting higher, always going to be higher in this first spot. As these are getting higher, what's happening to the test scores? The more hours of sleep we get, our test scores are going up. So we're also going to put higher here. So this one's always going to be higher. If you have a positive correlation, this one's also going to be higher. If you have a negative correlation, this one's higher, but this one's lower. Those are your only two options. Higher, higher, or higher, lower. Positive is higher, higher. Negative is higher, lower. Now we need to pick out our two equations. Remember, these two are in slope-intercept. Y equals mx plus b. The last two are in point slope, which is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Read the problem. It says to assume h represents hours of sleep. Hours of sleep is on the x-axis, so my x should be replaced with h. Hours of sleep is the x. T represents the test scores. Test scores are on my y, so my y's should be replaced with t's. So the y is here. Which one is correctly replaced with the t? A is. On the point slope form, here's my y's. Which one shows it correctly replaced with t's? D does. So that's that easy. You have three really good examples to help you complete the problems on your packet. It's two-sided. Make sure you do the front and the back of the assignment. And then when you get finished, you can finish or correct any on yesterday's assignment.